An update on the Big Ten's interest in FSU and UNC. Hey, it's good to have you back here on the mountain. On our last live episode on Wednesday of last week, Steve talked about possible expansion of the Big Ten, specifically giving us a look at FSU and UNC. He also talked about who the 20th team might be and the timeline of all of this. He also has thrown out a school with the ACC that not many people have talked about. So some interesting developments here. We hope you enjoy the episode.
I want to let you guys know what I've heard. So I work in the kind of intersection of government and higher learning. I made some connections at Penn State during COVID times when things were a little bit more serious than just football. And I've kept those connections. I've kept in contact with them. And one of my best contacts at Penn State, I spoke with him on Monday. Now, I'll tell you, we spoke for 20 minutes and 80% of our conversation was about Penn State and how the team was going to do. Because first and foremost, we're both Penn State fans.
Sure.
Okay, so, I'm a Penn State homer. I love Penn State. And that's what we talk about mostly.
Yep.
But about 20% of the conversation, we did touch base on what is the latest and greatest with Big Ten expansion, with Florida State. And this person, my contact, he is in the athletic department, very close with the current AD and was close with the past AD. So, he's not maybe in direct meetings, but he's sitting in the room with the guy who's in the meeting. So anyways, just to kind of go over what we're talking about here, he reiterated to me, he said, whatever Paul Feinbaum was saying on, and I think David Jorgensen was kind of alluding to this.
Yeah.
Whatever Paul Feinbaum was saying about Florida State maybe not having a spot in the Big Ten, completely false. It is they will have a spot in the Big Ten. Everybody who's a fan of the show has been a fan. You know that I've been beating that AAU drum and saying that it is important to the Big Ten presidents. But here's the deal. All the Big Ten presidents believe that Florida State will be getting AAU status soon. It's not the end-all, be-all. The most important factors are money, TV ratings. But it is important to the Big Ten presidents, and they believe that Florida State will be an AAU member soon, so it's not a concern. And in fact, the Big Ten presidents are the largest voting bloc within the AAU, and if they want you in the AAU, see Miami, see Notre Dame, you're going to get an invite and be a member, as long as you meet the criteria, and Florida State is very close to meeting that criteria. So that's not a problem. Now, could Florida State decide to go to the SEC and get an invite to the SEC? Absolutely. That could happen. I don't have any connections with Florida State. I don't know what their conversations are.
Right.
So I can't speak to that, whether they would get an invite from the SEC. But I do know it's basically a foregone conclusion that they have a spot in the Big Ten. Okay. So if you're a Noles fan and you want them in the Big Ten, they've got a spot in the Big Ten. You can rest assured that. Now, what's the holdup right now? AAU membership and academics are not the holdup. It's timing. Okay. The Big Ten, they're not in a rush. They want Florida State, but they're not in a rush.
Yeah.
Well, as our Noles fans know, Florida State wants to get out of the ACC yesterday. Okay. Yeah. Or as of last August, their one filing they tried to. So Florida State is in a really big rush. The Big Ten, they're willing to just kind of sit back and say, hey, you guys figure out your legal problems. We will accept you. We have a spot for you when you get all that figured out. But they're not necessarily in a rush. So what was kind of proposed to me is there may be a situation where Florida State leaves, announces they're going to leave, but maybe the rights are still up in the air. Mm-hmm. And maybe, there's a year or two where Florida State kind of is almost acting as an independent, coming up with their own schedule, maybe scheduling some games with the Big Ten, maybe still playing games with the ACC. There may be a period there where there's some unknown and uncertainty, because right now the Big Ten, they don't want to take on a headache. They don't want to take on legal problems.
Sure.
They want Florida State to be free and clear when they invite them and accept them.
Yep.
So that's a big thing. So really, it's not anything about AAU, it's timing, okay? So while we were talking about that was the big question I asked him, okay? He just happened to throw out some stuff, and I went back and I asked him to make sure he was cool with me sharing this, because I didn't want to speak out of turn.
Right.
We talked about some North Carolina issues, okay? Because this person, again, he had connections with the previous AD, and when the previous Big Ten commissioner, Kevin Warren, was in place. And what he's always told me in the past was that North Carolina was the crown jewel of the next phase of the Big Ten's expansion. And that was Kevin Warren's plan. It was a plan all along. They wanted to go down the I-95 corridor, expand that way, and UNC was what they wanted. You know, after they got Florida State, UNC was the next thing they wanted. Well, what he's telling me now is basically it's a kind of a well-known, a poorly kept secret within the Big Ten. All the ADs are basically agreeing that Florida or North Carolina is off the table. It's just not worth the headache. Since Kevin Warren left, there's a whole bunch. So we have a new commissioner and a whole bunch of new presidents. So the thought processes have changed a bit. The new commissioner is just focused on your national TV rankings right now and how much value you bring right now to the deal. And some of the newer presidents, they don't have that desire to go and pick up North Carolina. Add to that the political situation that we've covered with the Board of Governors. The Big Ten, now if North Carolina just left the ACC tomorrow and wanted to join the Big Ten, I think they would take them, probably, most likely. But the Big Ten is not going to go begging to them, and they're not going to entertain, apparently this is what the ADs are talking about amongst themselves, they're not going to entertain a package deal with North Carolina State or anything like that. They have no interest in that. They have no interest in further headaches. To them, North Carolina is not worth those kind of headaches,
right?
At least right now. So what he told me is, for now, North Carolina is completely off the table. There's one other piece of kind of juicy news that he threw in here. I didn't even tell you about this yet.
Well, you've said the two things I know. Now you're juicing it up.
So this was a little, and
I'm a dweller all of a sudden.
I wasn't going to talk about it because it's just a little bit. It's more rumor and gossip a little bit. But
that's what everybody does.
I know, but it comes from a good source. So what he said,
but we're better than that.
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
So what
you're better than that, Steve.
The conventional wisdom. No, I'm not. the conventional wisdom, because I think it's interesting, and I don't know if this will happen or not, but I think it's important to just kind of put it in the conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
The conventional wisdom now, with all this Board of Governors stuff, is that the ACC is going to stick together. The Board of Governors' main goal is not to find the best landing spot for UNC or North Carolina State. It's to have the best situation for all of at least the public universities in the state of North Carolina, but also some of the private. They're all one big ecosystem.
Gotcha.
So that is their aim right now. They would rather keep the thing together, and they have the decision makers at North Carolina, at UNC, may want to leave and go to the SEC. They may want to leave and go to the Big Ten. But at the end of the day, the Board of Governors is really what controls all of that. So Big Ten ADs, they feel like, at least for this round, now we'll see what happens 5, 6, 10 years from now.
Right.
But in this round, the ACC is going to survive, and they're basically putting all of their eggs in one basket, which is the state of North Carolina. So, which leads me to this. Apparently, the Board of Governors is putting pressure on, or suggesting to, the North Carolina Board of Governors is suggesting to the ACC that they should consider adding ECU to the conference if there is a few teams that leave. So if we see like a Florida State, Clemson, Miami leave, that would be basically that would increase the chances of North Carolina State staying in
for sure,
because then all of their interests are covered under one entity. So I thought that was interesting. Then again, that's just like a rumor. Like, he's saying that's the word on the street, is that the Board of Governors wants the ACC to invite ECU.
Well, and we did a whole episode maybe 2 months ago now on the difference between the governors and the trustees. The governors of the educational system of the state of North Carolina. Their view of things are different, and you've seen some of this in the press, than what the trustee chairman of UNC or any university, but specifically in this case UNC, is saying. Well, the Board of Governors has control over the Board of Trustees. Now, there's a political issue there. There's legislation or legislators that can get involved and all that kind of jazz. I'm not going down the politics of it. But that makes complete sense in terms of adding yet another North Carolina school to this. It strengthens that argument. It strengthens their base. It's everything that would make sense about this. And when you say that, I go, wow. When you kind of connect some dots, that actually kind of makes some sense.
And that's the thing, is there's been these unconnected dots for a while now. There's been like kind of silence out of, like, when, for a while there was, hey, when's the UNC shoe going to drop? When are they going to? And everything has gone quiet. And I think the reason why, based on what I'm being told, is the Board of Governors has basically put it out there to the Big Ten, to the SEC, to everybody, hey, we are keeping North Carolina together, and really,
For sure.
and these schools being together in one conference from their perspective, because a lot of the Board of Governor members are also politicians or they're connected to legislature. It's so important to the North Carolina economy for all of those to be strong. You have all these ACC championships in the state and all of those things. So that's their priority right now. And so from his perspective and from what I understand of the Big Ten, is that North Carolina, for now, this round, is completely, UNC is off the table for expansion.
I have a couple comments.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up some commenters real quick, and then I'll give you my comments.
All right.
Squeeze Money just named the new ACC conference as the All-Carolina Conference. I love it. You've seen some people now saying they're the All-Coast Conference because they've went to the West Coast now. But what you're saying maybe is the All-Carolina Conference, or at least the majority of them. But I like that. That's a good spin. Heard that here first, I think, from Squeeze Money. And then also that college football guy saying ECU and Appy State, and that was kind of in the back of my mind too, was kind of Appy State. I don't think it's an all or nothing thing. But yeah, I know we usually have a guy that is on that is an ECU fan. At least he's got the little pirate symbol. I can't remember his name.
I can't either.
I'm pretty sure.
I was hoping we'd see him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when he heard that, he would have chimed in. But maybe he'll see this after the fact. But yeah, so my first thoughts, I want to go back to FSU real quick first and what you said about FSU. And I want to be really clear here because I think people get all worked up about this. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is the Big Ten will, if not right away, pretty soon thereafter, have an invitation ready for FSU.
Yes, but maybe not at the same time.
Right. So timing might be a little bit off, but the stars are aligning in that an invitation will be coming eventually for FSU.
And yes, and they've been made aware that they know they have that invitation.
Okay, so you're saying that they even know.
Yes.
Through back channels.
The ADs in the Big Ten are already in discussions with the AD at Florida State of scheduling and all that kind of travel and all that kind of stuff already.
Well, I appreciate you clearing that up. And then also that doesn't mean on the shoe being on the other foot, the SEC maybe isn't doing the same thing. They might get the invite from them, and it's up to FSU to determine if they're getting 2 or 3 invites. You've heard all this Big 12 mumbo jumbo. I'm not going to get into that because I think it's bunk if there's a Big 10 invite sitting on the table. But if there is the SEC invitation and there's a Big 10 invitation, Steve is not saying right now that FSU is going to the Big 10.
Right.
He is saying there's an invitation awaiting FSU, and there is things happening back channels right now. So I want to make that very clear. He's not saying it will happen, but he is saying the invitation is
the groundwork
is
laid.
The groundwork is laid. So I just want to be clear on that because people they can read different things about what you say. The UNC thing, again, isn't surprising, and it makes sense. Why would a Big Ten or even an SEC? I mean, we've said multiple times, the SEC is pretty freaking happy being where they are. Why would either of these want to get into a situation in the state of North Carolina that has baggage attached to it? They don't need that. They don't want that. Now, if UNC can become free and clear, different story. But that's not where it's at, so why are we spending our time on this when we can spend our time on different things? I also then would parlay that with what you're saying in terms of they're looking at today's media value. They're not looking for necessarily 10 years down the road what could happen to these schools and all that. We've done some comments like Georgia Tech might be fun and Miami might be fun. If they're looking at today, Junior, those schools they're not looking at them probably.
And that's specifically the new commissioner's focus. So that is a change. The previous commissioner, Kevin Warren, was looking 10 years in the future and wanted to make the Big Ten into a mini NFL. And he had a certain way to do it. But the new commissioner is really focused on today's TV value, what they can get in just a few years when they're going to negotiate their next media deal.
Understood. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on some things because I know how things can get heard sometimes. And we have some people giving you a lot of thank yous, some great insights, all that kind of stuff. So good stuff, Steve. Thanks for doing that.
You got a little bit more here on the same topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, wasn't done. What my contact said is the Big Ten is not in a rush to identify that 20th team. He said, and this goes into the timing issue, they're not in a rush to add Florida State, but they know they want to add Florida State.
Sure.
They're also not in a rush to add the 20th team, and they don't know who they want. So they're going to take their time on that. And what I was told was there may be, again, we talked about a bridge period where Florida State is out of the ACC. They know they're going to the Big Ten, but maybe they don't start playing a traditional Big Ten schedule, maybe for a year or two, maybe like the 25 and 26 football seasons, where they do some other kind of independent or hybrid schedule or something like that. And maybe that's kind of where the SEC and the Big 12 conversation is coming from, because maybe Florida State's looking at their options. And they're like, well, the Big Ten won't take us now. What are our other options? Right. So that was mentioned to me. And then the other thing that was mentioned is the 20th school, the Big Ten wants to look national, okay? They want to, like, who's going to bring the most value at the national level? So could that mean they look at Clemson? Yes, they are looking at Clemson. They're considering Clemson. I know for a fact they're considering Clemson, but they have not decided for sure that Clemson is the team. They're a possibility. And Clemson sees themselves in their discussions with the Big Ten. They see themselves as a national program, not just a regional program.
Right.
So Clemson, possibility. Notre Dame, yes. Big Ten would love to get Notre Dame. I think just the feeling right now is that Notre Dame has what they want and they're not ready. You know, maybe if we give it another 3 or 4 more years, we'll see what happens with that. Could they be a possibility? Yes. And some people keep asking about Texas A&M. I know Genetics is talking about. I have never heard. My contact has never mentioned Texas A&M.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing: it's likely that different ADs across the Big Ten probably have different kind of parts of the puzzle and have different contacts they reach out to. So, my connections at Penn State, they have not mentioned Texas A&M, but he doesn't know who the 20th school is going to be, other than they're kind of going. They've eliminated UNC. They've kind of gone away from that regional approach of going down the East Coast that Kevin Warren wanted to do, and they're looking for a 20th school that's a national draw, that can draw national television ratings and media value right away from day one. So that leaves open a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely.
And I wish I had a better, hey, this is who they're looking at, but it's wide open right now.
And those are the tidbits that Steve was able to get here this past week. We don't do a lot of college realignment because it is a bit of a quagmire, but when Steve hears some news from his connections at Penn State, we do like to get it to our mountain dwellers. What we do here is everything Big Ten, everything Mountain West. Will be doing our previews of these conferences and their teams, as well as picking every Big Ten and Mountain West game this season. If that is something that interests you, make sure you tune in to the Big Mountain. We do live episodes every Wednesday night at 8:30. So with that, give this one a like, subscribe if you like our content. We hope to see you next time on the Big Mountain.